final Behind the Radio episode for Season 3.
Good evening, curious minds out there across the world. As always, I'm your host, DJ Jazwa, and this is the Behind the Radio for Season 3, Episode 12, Operation Northern Exposure, The Siege of Ruby Ridge. Well, we got back to what we do best with this one, arguably, and took a deep dive look at what really happened on Ruby Ridge back in late August of '92. I was actually alive for this event, showing my age once again. Yes, but it's true. And I vividly remember the news footage and the aerial shots that were coming in about what happened. It was a really weird time for the country in general during that point. I mean, you had the Gulf War, Act 1, I guess, that happened just the year before. The internet had just become a thing for most people. The Cold War had finally come to an end, and while the USSR was being dismantled, so too was decades of propaganda and fear tactics that were used to justify the quote-unquote necessary evils in dealing with the Russia threat and the threat of communism. America watched the footage of the LA police mercilessly beating Rodney King. And then in April of '92, we saw the 4 officers who had blatantly used excessive force in their arrest just get acquitted of all those charges. And then LA erupted into riots and flames. The sentiment was shifting in America, and Gen X weren't nearly as complacent or as trusting of authority as the generations that came before them. I guess they had probably watched too many examples of lies and treachery play out live on TV in a way that really was never before possible. The tide in the country had shifted after the Bush presidency, and a growing distrust of the government, we'll put it that way, that had been largely absent since the tactical dismantling of the hippie generation in the 60s, had begun to once again grow in the hearts and minds of those that were, I guess, awake enough or who cared enough to see it. So when America watched a small family who, for reasons most were totally unaware of or unsure of at least, become locked into a standoff against the full weight of the federal government, people paid attention. More on that in a minute, though. First, I just want to jump back into our last episode real quick and discuss a few things, as well as clear up one little point of confusion. But yeah, just got a little bit to talk about the episode. Not so much of a news segment at the end of this one. It's just kind of a discussion that I want to have with you guys. I don't have anything prepared really, but I do want to just discuss some things that I've been quiet about up until now. Yeah, so that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so first off, I hope that everyone enjoyed that last episode. I know it was kind of dense and probably tough to get through at certain points, but I appreciate you guys sticking with it. It's one that's been on my board since the end of Season 1, but I guess now really felt like I had enough of the story down to try and cover it in detail, or at least the detail needed to tell that story accurately. It's far more complicated than the media has made it out to be. I do want to make one quick correction up front here. In the episode, I incorrectly stated that Randy Weaver had completed Green Beret Special Forces training, but that he never got assigned to a unit. While Weaver apparently made this claim to federal investigators in '85, that he, quote, served 3 years as an Army Special Forces Green Beret, and that he had been an Army engineer, it was also used at points to justify the greatly exaggerated threat assessment, and according to the '94 DOJ report of the Ruby Ridge Task Force, to the Office of Professional Responsibility of Investigations of Allegations of Improper Governmental Conduct in the Investigation, Apprehension, and Prosecution of Randall C. Weaver and Kevin L. Harris, June 10, 1994 report, yeah, it's a mouthful. That's what she said. It states that press accounts called Weaver, quote, a former Army Green Beret. That was likely the Waterloo Courier that they were referencing there. An equally long and verbose title of the Senate Subcommittee report cite the review of his DD-214. It's just your discharge paperwork. Whenever you leave the military, you'll get a DD-214, and that just states like your service record, and it's for you to be able to get benefits and whatnot. But it showed that he was not actually Special Forces qualified, but he likely did receive some survival and demolitions training. The issue with that, though, still is that it's an accepted part of the official narrative, but the full 154-page report that is cited as containing that info isn't available anywhere online, so there's no way to be able to confirm that detail. I went back and forth with this one more than just about any other part of that episode, and I ended up just going with the version supported by Weaver, early media reports, and the threat assessment against him. I did want to clarify though, the official narrative in Wikipedia, I'm sure, will tell you that his DD-214 doesn't support those claims and only support him being a combat engineer, but that he did likely have some survival and demolitions training within his rating. But again, that's just people referencing seeing the DD-214, so unless, I guess, you're next of kin, or you can somehow get the discharge paperwork from whichever daughter, Sarah probably, I would think, who ended up with it, then you really don't have any way to check that for yourself. Because even if you did somehow get your hands on the full subcommittee report where the original statement was allegedly made, it doesn't actually contain a copy of his service record at all. So you're still left trying to take the government's word on it, I guess. I tried to be as neutral and fair in the telling of the story as I could. The Weavers definitely had some extreme religious and political views, and I guess depending on who you trust, likely said a lot of inflammatory stuff, particularly Vicky, who tended to go all out and scorched earth in a lot of her letters and things that she said publicly. Using all of that to dehumanize them, however, doesn't really tell an accurate story. And I felt that it skews the listener, well, most at least, their opinion of what happened. Even if they were some crazy religious cultists who were deeply racist, which that's not supported by the evidence, for the record. None that I could actually verify. What matters isn't what they think or even what they say. What matters is, did their actions harm anyone prior to August 21st? And was the response leading up to the 21st, as well as after, warranted and justified? Was it necessary? Was it in the best interest of the public? Was it something that should ever happen again? Those are the questions that I wanted to leave you guys with, that I hope that the episode would cause you to confront. Hopefully it did that. As for my thoughts on it, well, it's a little complicated, but as long as it isn't directly putting people in danger, I'm definitely a free speech absolutist. I don't have to agree with what is being said to stand up for someone's right to be able to say it. So I tend to look at the events through the lens of, I guess you would say, a libertarian, someone who spent their life protesting excessive government overreach and corruption. So to me, what I see above all is a clearly excessive response that led directly to the events that initiated the standoff. Before that, I see a pretty clear example of bare minimum inciting and solicitation of a crime, repeatedly, if not blatant entrapment, and that's what started all of it. Weaver likely would have never bothered anyone or committed any kind of crimes had Fedele not cultivated a personal relationship and deliberately leaned on that, playing the friend in need, pressure campaign angle on him in hopes of entrapping him so that he could turn him into a CI, whatever. Something that, as I said in the episode, wasn't even needed or warranted to begin with. Then there's the response, and especially the actions of FBI sniper team lead Lon Haruchi, which in my opinion are very difficult to justify. The rules of engagement were drawn up based largely on outdated, incorrect, and at times completely fabricated intelligence. There is certainly a debate to be had as to why that was the case. If it was interagency conflicts, just confusion, or plain old ineptitude, all of it probably most likely played a significant role. I also don't think that the likelihood of the overreaction being in part intentional in order to try and cover up and then later attempt to justify the many missteps that had already been made should be totally dismissed. My gut tells me, as well as my experience in investigating cases of this nature, that it just has to be at least a very realistic component in what took place. Regardless where you personally fall on the spectrum of beliefs about this whole case, one salient point is pretty difficult to deny. It was avoidable, and it should never have happened how it did. It was one of many American tragedies that fomented a greater distrust of our government and their tendency towards violent overreach whenever presented with any real or perceived resistance to or challenging of their power and control over our lives. A power that, in truth, they were never intended to have the capacity for when it was originally conceived. A power that has largely been seized with a mixture of subterfuge and violence and grown by politicians with aims not on representing us, but on controlling us and bending our will to serve their aims and in service of agendas that perpetually fail to benefit the regular citizens. Agendas that benefit the military-industrial complex, for sure, or the wealthy so-called elites, and corporate America, the giant corporate machine that seems to run everything. A machine that continues to grow and crush us under the weight of its perpetual debt and financial servitude more every year. So is it really that difficult to see, and I say even sympathize with, people who opt out, those so-called radicals who reject a system that they no longer feel serves their best interests. So while I don't agree with the more extreme beliefs of the Weaver family in any sort of way, so long as they weren't harming anyone else, I definitely support their right to worship, believe, and raise their family however they saw fit, without the government injecting itself into our lives unnecessarily, and certainly without a violent assault on their entire family. Yes, Randy Weaver broke a largely arbitrary law, one that our founding fathers, I'm sure, would have resisted themselves. But he did so believing that he was helping a friend, or force approximation thereof at least. And who's to say how far you would go to help a friend when it didn't involve directly harming anyone else? Hell, I'm sure we all have at least one friend that we said we would kill for or die for, at very least hinted might help hide the bodies for them. You know what I mean? So while it's easy to say that Randy Weaver broke the law and there are consequences, and yeah, you'd be correct, it's a little harder to, in good conscience at least, say that those consequences that they dealt with were truly justified. Though I'm also sure that a case for it could be made, and has been made. And if you think that, what happened to them was totally justified, then I'd love to hear about it in a comment. Leave me some. I want to get your thoughts on it too. That, my friends, is really the crux of Ruby Ridge, and what I hope that you take away from the episode. Because like it or not, the greater a government's power grows, the more liberty we are tricked, compelled, or flat out forced into surrendering. And the blurrier the line gets and the shorter the distance between law-abiding citizen and outlaw becomes. But that's just my take on it. I would love if you wanted to share yours in the comments, or shoot us an email. You know how to get in touch. There's also always the Discord, where you got a live chat opportunity after every episode, and there's tons of extras that you'll find in there. It's totally free. Hit it up if you're interested. Links on the Facebook page, and I post it pretty regularly in the bottom of the episode descriptions. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into this little news break that's not a news break that I've got coming up right after this. So, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, I don't have what we would call like a typical news segment tonight, but I do feel like there are just some things that we need to discuss real quick. Let me start off by addressing the Trump-sized elephant in the room. As most of you will no doubt recall, I pushed really hard last year to try and get Trump elected over Kamala, which was always way less about Trump, by the way, and way more about the globalist shill and Biden Part 2 word salad boogaloo that opposed him. Trump seemed to have learned, I thought, how vile the deep state truly was, and with his attempted assassination, one would think, that it really sunk in to not get in bed with these people. I guess I erroneously believed that if they wanted him dead to try and keep him out, then he had to be ready to stand up to him. He had to be the threat, the one that we needed. I felt at least he would be way slower in furthering any kind of agenda to feed into the police state that I saw coming under Kamala. And plus, we saw the entire media machine coalesce behind backing Kamala. And anytime that happens, pretty much an alarm goes off saying that I need to go the opposite direction of that. And listen, I still feel that we dodged a bullet with Kamala, but I also feel at this point that we ended up only taking a different one in Trump. I failed to grasp at the time, I guess, just how deeply in bed with the darkest elements of big tech, namely Palantir, and more so the funding machine that is Zionist big money donors, namely Miriam Adelson of note, and of course AIPAC. I never would have thought that as soon as he took office, though, that he would get sucked in immediately with the big tech surveillance state and become deeply entwined with flesh demons like Albert Bourla and big pharma stooges, or that when he said he was going to drain the swamp, that the swamp was actually just his pet nickname for Netanyahu's ballsack. Sorry, it had to be said though. I ignorantly bought back in, momentarily, to the illusion of choice that our current political machine is predicated and so dependent on. And I've always felt that we have, at least since Kennedy, been presented with two preordained choices, and that both were pre-approved to give the illusion of free choice to us if we picked them. That our elections were more political theater, like the entire two-party system, designed to placate the masses while always serving to further the aims of moving more and more power and control to the government side, while working to funnel wealth more and more out of the hands of the lower and middle classes and into the hands of the 1% and the corporations that really run this country. This folly of mine has only served to recommit me to those beliefs, though. I could go on a long-ass diatribe about how each party just uses propaganda about the other to sow division and justify any actions that they take, so long as it appears to their base to be harming the quote-unquote other side. The manufactured enemy, how none of them truly are working on our best interests in there, but really in service of self-enrichment and expanding the power of the government as a whole. How by keeping us perpetually divided and fighting one another over whose side is really the baddies, it keeps us angry at one another. Too angry to ever come together and recognize that in truth, they are just fucking all of us over. And until we learn to recognize that and work together, then nothing will ever really change for the better. But if you follow my personal page, you probably heard all about all that. And I've been saying this kind of stuff for over 20 years and it hasn't seemed to make much of a dent anyway. All I can really do is sit back and wait and pray that people come to this realization on their own, preferably en masse, and above all, before it's too late. Now, I don't want this whole episode of BTR to just be doom and gloom. There's a lot of stories I could talk about, but I don't see it lightening the mood much if I did. So while there's still a lot that I can cover right now and that probably needs to be said in a lot of ways, I would prefer to just shift gears before we get out of here tonight and discuss what's next for the show. First off, I just want to once again thank all of you guys. Although probably 90% of the audience doesn't ever even listen to these BTR episodes, but extra thanks to you guys who actually do, by the way. But thanks to all of you, everyone, for tuning in, for telling friends, for finding the show to begin with. According to this year's Spotify Wrapped at least, we have once again made some really encouraging, I'll say, strides in growing the show, finding new audiences and several other areas, which is all thanks to you beautiful people, really. So it is definitely appreciated. But I'll get further into the rap numbers whenever we do the season finale this year, as I always do. I also have plans to switch that up this year a little bit. Hopefully it'll work at least. There will likely be a season 4. I've kind of been on the fence. I've brought it up a few times in these episodes, but there will also be some fairly big changes that will be taking place for the better, I feel, if we do that. I wanted to keep this fairly short and sweet, and I think I've somewhat succeeded maybe. I had mentioned doing one more episode at the end of this last one, because I've got a great one coming together here, but with my schedule and some changes that have happened and some things that are going on, and then trying to put some stuff together for the season finale, New Year's thing, I really don't see any way of being able to get to it or do it the justice that it deserves. So what I'll probably do is make a bonus episode that will likely drop after the season finale and sometime in between whenever season 4 begins. And it may or may not be the only one of those that you get. We'll just have to see. If the view numbers are high enough for that extra episode, and then I'll probably drop one more. We'll just have to see how it goes. But my intentions here was to get you out pretty quick, make this a very brief, short and sweet kind of BTR episode. So I'm going to go ahead and do that without rambling any further. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. Please share your thoughts on the last episode in the comments, or send them to us somehow. Or just yell them into the ether if you must. So I really do care what you guys think, and I've been wanting to do this one for a long time. Like I said, it took enormous amounts of work, and fact-checking it was a complete nightmare, and that's being generous. But hopefully it was worth it. Hopefully you guys, at least some of you guys, enjoyed it. We've got a lot of really exciting things coming up, so stay tuned. But until then, take care of yourselves out there. Take care of one another when you can, and I'll talk to you all again real soon on the next Clandestine Radio.